Yeah. Fitness pack.
Yeah.
So, welcome back everyone to the next sections of our hearings today. The first speaker of this section is Claire Bleakley. Claire's submission is on page 200, pack 71. So for your benefit, Claire, and for those who will speak after you, you have 10 minutes to present to members. It is suggested that you make your presentation during the first 5 to 6 minutes and allow 4 or 5 minutes for questions from councillors. Your allocated time includes both your presentation time and time for questions from councillors, and Amy will raise her hand at 9 minutes to indicate that you are coming to the end of your presentation time when you're ready.
I'm making this presentation on behalf of me and my husband. I used to belong to a group called Democracy Now, and we seek to develop and implement actions supporting community identity, community representation, community perspectives, concerns and views, and try to reflect a community voice as well in partnership with our community centres, our community boards and things like that. So I would just like to make a concerned point on page 71. It's got question 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 were not answered. However, if you actually have a look at the very small writing on 72, you will find that all the questions that were asked have been answered, and I'm really concerned because this means that there is the possibility that the concerns we have raised will be omitted from the statistics that you have got from council. So I will start. Here are the considerations of the questions as set out in the draft South Wanda District Council long-term plan. Question 1. We support option 1. Council proposed to increase the use of a uniform annual general charge, UAGC, from 21% to 28%. With the amendment, this is my amendment, that it be raised to 30% as a true representation between urban and rural by 2028. Question 2. We support option 1, a targeted rate based on the proximity to the 3 main towns with the amendments. The distance should be only 5 kilometres, as the people outside this boundary pay for their own sewage, rubbish disposal, water allocation, bores, rainwater, have no capability often to be able to connect to the water service or refuse collection. But we do support the assets, the maintenance of assets and libraries. We oppose option 2, the funding of the general rate based on capital value of all residents. The urban residents benefit from the use of the amenities and assets increased over the rural residents who are more remote outside the town boundaries. The rural properties inside and outside the 10-kilometre boundary will pay a higher rate than the urban residents. Under the capital value option, all properties contribute equally through the rates. This means that the average property price across the district for urban services will be addressed by another submitter who is going to be speaking on behalf of Democracy Now under his own name, and that is Mr. Jim Heckel. For fairness, a UAC should be allocated to 75% urban and 25% rural. Rural should be considered outside 5k outside the town boundary and has to provide, as it has to provide for its own services, sewage, water, rubbish disposal, and very often the libraries and things like that are either shut when people are working or for the sake of argument, you have changed the library times, but it was a problem if you weren't in town. When you got back on the train, the library would be closed and it wouldn't be open when you got, and also Saturdays had libraries closed unless you wanted to travel. So we are grateful that the libraries are back to working a good full time. We also agree that actually a charge should be put on books that are taken out to just offset some of those library charges. Doesn't have to be very much, and it could be there could be a family charge and there could be a charge on the amount of books taken out as a maximum. But it is really important that those kind of charges should be offset, maybe even for swimming pools, a membership charge would be useful just to help the council in their offsetting some of the costs, even if it only does the lighting. Question 4, we support option 1. Refuse and recycling on a user pays basis and no rural properties charged as part of the refuse and recycling charge unless they are serviced by the refuse truck and require bins. So this is the main point I want to make on question 5. Discharge, I would like you to discharge and withdraw from Wellington Water. Their costs are prohibitive, 3 times what other councils are charged. We believe that option 1 is the best solution. And this is we want to remove third-party contractors and bring expertise in-house and support a shared 3 water service with the Wairarapa Tararua councils. We suggest you carve out wastewater and add another 8 million to the plan, which will give the 3 towns time to upgrade their wastewater, giving the ability of the 3 towns to progress and grow. Greytown and Martinborough, after their upgrades, are now non-compliant. This is the unresolved Featherston wastewater treatment plant is still a costly dilemma. We would like to expedite the 3 towns wastewater treatment options by contracting directly with Envirodin, making DAF systems in Dannevirke. I've given him a call and Envirodin actually made the DAF system that did the prototype to check out how Featherston wastewater could be purified. Now I rang the gentleman. He makes the DAF systems for $400,000. He reckoned we should have 2 per town, and it would cost about $600,000 to actually plug it in and get it all ready to be used to go through the UV machines or into the wetlands. The reason being this, if you actually multiply that out and do it to the 3 towns, it would come to about 4 million. They all had a wetland, it will come to 8 million. And that is considerably less than the 22 million that Featherston Wastewater has been told it's going to charge and be cost if we go with Wellington Water. So for us, this DAF machine will bring the wastewater standards up to compliance for about 30 years, plus leave the land unpolluted, the rest of the Hodder land unpolluted, up for residential sale. And this would offset the price of the Featherston wastewater treatment plant close to zero. And it would probably also fund an in-house council person who would overlook all these systems to make sure they're running okay. Rick did say that he would also be close at hand as he's in Dannevirke and he's designed it to help iron out any problems. I do ask the CE if that's okay to check that one out because I think it's a feasible option for our 3 towns. We would like consideration of a genetic trespass and pesticide drift to be considered in the rural areas and to develop policies that would affect rural farmers, especially if this new gene technology bill goes through, that would then allow contamination across the Rohe and affect the organic farms, the seed producers in this area whose export market requires non-GMO. So if you can look at a genetic trespass or pesticide drift policy, we would be really grateful. That is ours.
Excellent timing, Claire. There's about 30 seconds left on that. I just wanted to check with you. Are you aware libraries are unable to charge?
No, I have no. We used to be charged. Why isn't it?
Unable to.
Why?
Why? Because the legislation says we're unable to charge. Libraries are a free public good. Okay. We've got 10 seconds, Councillor Olds.
No, just a quick point of clarification, Claire. Genetic trespass and pesticide drift. I know we haven't got much time left in terms of getting into detail, but and certainly pesticide management is the responsibility of Greater Wellington Regional Council rather than South Wairarapa District Council. Would that be your understanding?
Land use was part of the RMA and part of council, district councils rather than regional councils. So land management is land use, and that is the RMA under the district councils, to my understanding.
Okay, yeah, no, pesticide, you're talking about pesticide, which is really, yeah, okay. Yeah, I might come back to you on that, Dee. Yeah,
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Claire, and for your clear presentation. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Sue Fox. Sue's submission is on page 212, 73. Good morning, Sue. Please take a seat. And proceed with your meeting.
Okay, thank you. Just a little bit about me. Obviously, I was born back in England, and during my career as a lawyer, I worked for 9 different councils back in England. One Leeds council had 2.2 million ratepayers, so I have some considerable background in council matters. I've lived in Featherstone for about 10 years. So this morning I'd just like to reiterate some of the comments that I made about rates and roading in my original submission. Discussing the adjusting the uniform rate, we had substantial consultation last year on how the rate should be set, and we decided that the emphasis should be on rating by property valuation. Now it seems that we've had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from some of the people in the rural areas who have massively massive properties, expensive properties, that suddenly have to pay a little bit more. So these people have the most choices over where they live. Councillors will know that a large proportion of your ratepayers are on fixed incomes, whether that's because they're superannuitants or on benefits or on very low incomes being, paid in the rural sector. So South Wairarapa District Council has a population of only 12,000 and only 7,000 rateable properties. I would suggest that trying to distinguish between different services and who has access to what is impractical and inequitable. We all pay for roading, whether we use that road or not. Rural population has to accept town exists in their district. Where do their children go to school? Where does district administration take place? What about disaster support, etc.? In a district as small as South Wairarapa District Councils, rates should apply to all on the basis of the value of their property, as I thought we had resolved in the last rates consultation. No doubt the recent adjustments brought people with high value properties out of the woodwork, as I've just mentioned. I feel South Wairarapa District Council is trying too hard to meet individuals' comments about what ratepayers are getting for their money. At the end of the day, we live in a district, not a compartment. And in a district the size of South Wairarapa District Council, we should be prepared to share the costs of the district as a whole, not pick and choose. Many of those ratepayers living in our 3 towns are on fixed incomes and living in modest homes. Many stoically absorb the cost of rates increases, going without basic needs without complaint. Superannuation went up only 3% last week. It's proposed that rates increases are going to be limited to 4.7%, smoothed out over the next 10 years. On top of the 50% rates rise over the last 3 or 4 years, that's simply too much. If the targeted percentage went up and the 10-kilometre radius is applied, that's going to be a double whammy for those living in the most modest housing in the district. This does not appear to be fair on any level. Now, I don't know if you have the consultation document in front of you, but there's a table on page 68. In summary, if you have a residential home in Featherstone for $530,000, you are paying, or you will pay next year, $4,996, and that is an increase of 12%. And that's an increase in real money of $545, perhaps to be paid out of superannuation. If you look at the commercial rates, they are only $1,000 more. If you look at the agricultural rates, they are only $1,000 more. It seems to me that the domestic ratepayer is subsidising the big commercial enterprises in this district. At the end of the day, commercial and agricultural properties can earn their owners, their ratepayers, considerable amounts of money. Whereas people who are just living in the family home, unable to find somewhere small to live, have no choice and are paying almost as much as their commercial neighbours. So I'm basically asking South Wairarapa District Council to ignore the belated comments of those articulate few with choices and abandon the proposal to charge ratepayers within 10 kilometres of town centres for town services. Or, if proceeding with this, let's have targeted roading and bridges rate payments so that townies only pay for kilometres of roads and bridges within 10 kilometres of the town centre. As can be seen, this can get a little bit silly, and I'm not aware of any New Zealand council that adopts such distinctions, and certainly not one with the size of the South Wairarapa District ratepayer base of only 7,700 properties. Going on to my next point, spending on water infrastructure. This was question 15 in my records, but Claire seemed to refer to a different, question. So just there, it's my view that the status quo should be maintained until the local water done well legislation comes into force, and then the new entity can start to make headway. Going on to the next question, spending on roading. Had there been another box, I would have ticked other. If I read the question correctly, we are being consulted on some capital expenditure to make up for the fact that one South Wairarapa District Council application for low cost, low risk projects has been unsuccessful. We are given an option of paying for all of those listed jobs, or 49% of the cost of them. We are given no detail as to which jobs might be prioritised. In the meantime, the NZTA application has been resubmitted, and as far as I know, we're still awaiting for NZTA's response. The list of jobs includes supplementary work, studies, planting, a walkway through the vine, a cycleway and other nice to haves. I do not consider the case as being met to borrow for these jobs when high risk on cost projects can be covered by NZTA funding. Capital borrowing of £1 million is enough to put up our rates by 4%. Capital borrowing is capped and South Wairarapa District Council is heading for its limit. We might have some more important things to spend the money on. Some of the proposals could be the subject of other pots of grant money or community fundraising. And many of the jobs are out of the town 10-kilometre town radius. Should these be supported by those ratepayers not using them? In view of the council's acceptance of the need to reduce future rate rises, I feel it would be more acceptable to postpone these jobs and smooth them into the operational matrix over the next 10 years. Hopefully, the resubmitted NZTA application will receive approval in any event. Have I still got time?
You've got about 32 seconds, okay? We got, no, you're just stretching. Any kind of question was a very comprehensive and well laid out submission and perfectly well timed. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your submission and your feedback. So
Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
and just for the benefit of all speaking, all submissions, written and verbal, will be considered at upcoming deliberations meetings. So that's where we will further discuss your submission. Our next speaker is James Brody. His submission is on page 328, pack 75. Good morning, James.
I've just got 2 or 3 points that I want to make. I've written it out. Leave it behind.
What was that, sorry?
I've written out what I'm about to say.
Yes,
I'll leave it behind.
that'd be perfect, thank you.
I've been a ratepayer here since 1996 and lived in Martin full time since 2000. I've always been rated as rural. This meant very low rates as they were based on land value until very recently. And subsequently, my rates have increased substantially, as they should have, in relation to other ratepayers. So for 25 years, I've paid a very low rate. If we move to capital valuations, so those larger capital valuations are being asked to contribute at a more equitable rate than before. Martinborough as a community is dependent on a range of people with diverse skills and services, and unaffordable rates drive people away. This has already happened in Martinborough to a large extent with the gentrification of the town. And the proposal to increase the uniform charge from 21% to 28% builds in a permanent increase in rates for those who are able to afford it. Retirees on fixed incomes, working people on average and below wage rates with very small annual increases to their remuneration. And from personal experience, I know that the remuneration of hospitality workers and vineyard workers is usually at the minimum wage, and permanent or full-time jobs are nearly impossible to find. This proposal gives a significant tax break to the wealthy. The examples in the document demonstrate that, and it provides an increase to those least able to afford it. It is hard to understand why council would choose option 1 as their preferred option. It's somewhat trump effect. One wonders if this is a compensation to those with large capital valuations who are now paying an appropriate portion of their rates. So question 2 is the targeted rate based on the 10-kilometre boundary. I find the rationale for this hard to justify. Country people use Considine Park for only club events, they use the town hall. Hospitality is centred in Martinborough. We know people travel to these facilities, the medical centres in Martinborough. Many rural people also move into town as they retire and benefit from the services that are available. Proposed differential is around $11 according to the book, right, this current year, which is negligible. It sets up costs to maintain the differential rating system. My question, why not a bigger reduction for those who live 10 kilometres away or perhaps 50 kilometres away from the centre? Financially, the proposed differential is not significant at this time, but it may come to act as a pressure point on the council in future years. What happens next year when NZTA no longer pays for the upgrade of the Palliser Road? Perhaps the roading charge for rural ratepayers should be increased by 250% to allow for the inevitable road maintenance that will be required. Or perhaps Ngawi ratepayers should pay for the loan. This proposal introduces a mechanism for charging different groups separate rate charges through the district. Perhaps Featherston or Greytown with different infrastructure requirements should pay a differential rate from Martinborough. I don't understand where the pressure has come from to come up with this option as the preferred option by the council. I think this proposal is very unwise. Last one is for water services. Again, option 1. This is the preferred option by council. So this option includes an allowance. No, sorry. This is the option that has a very slight increase for inflation. My question is, does this option include allowance for future maintenance of water and wastewater services? Will it avoid the situation the council currently faces, a halt on further development in the urban area, and therefore limit new ratepayers to help pick up the burden that we will have? The current lack of maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant is due to no cumulative provision towards maintenance or future upgrading over 30 years. For the whole time that I have been here, no money has been put aside for the maintenance of the wastewater system. And now, of course, South Wairarapa faces wastewater treatment plant upgrades in all 3 towns. Option 1, which is just for a slight increase in inflation, would appear to lead to a recurrence of the same situation that Martinborough currently faces. So I welcome some clarification regarding the relationship between option 1, slight increase to inflation, and the funding proposal for capital investment in infrastructure on page 61 of the long-term plan.
Thank you, James. Council members have any questions this morning? Very well laid out. Councillor Woodcock.
Not many questions, just thanks, James. A very balanced submission. Thanks.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your submission. And as with others, it will be considered as part of our deliberations. Our next presenter is John Cuttermore. He has ahead of time let us know that he is unable to be here in person, but has sent through a statement to be read on his behalf. And Amy is going to do that for us now.
Well,
Just been presented.
previous speaker.
Facilities rates. Firstly, reasonable equity between all ratepayers in the use of capital provided. There has to be a move away from funding based on valuations of properties, inhabited dwellings on rated properties. I believe this is the nearest you can get legally to a population-based rates taken facilities used by all to a lesser or greater extent. In this day and age, with a mobile society and centralisation of schools, business, health, recreation facilities, etc., rural residents do use these provided facilities more. I feel this can be provided possibly by 2 scenarios. 1, sharing equally the expense across all dwellings, e.g. $5 million budget, 5,000 inhabited dwellings. This equates to about 1,000 per inhabited dwelling. I only pays about $4,000 of the 4 dwellings on the property, not $8,000 I currently pay. It will mean urban dwellers will pay about double the current portion for those facilities they do actually use more than most rural residents. This is my preferred option as it is still fairer but simpler to administer and easier on urban with a higher aging population. It also covers the likes of B&Bs. It takes up commercial building and properties as long as they are uninhabited. 2. Sharing 60% urban, 40% rural with the 10-kilometre zone around the local town zoned urban. This option, while reflecting perhaps more accurately the facility usage, does bring in question over which side of the boundary you reside and subsequently more administration query. This would lift the urban rate for the same facilities about another 20% and reduce rural about 25% over option 1. I also feel a very small portion, in brackets question mark, of the general rates from commercial properties, including uninhabited properties, should be transferred to facilities funds to cover outsiders' use of the same facilities. Whilst any of these options will appear unacceptable to urban dwellers, the reality must be made clear to all that users pays not on a perceived wealth basis created by the valuation criteria. I apologise for not being able to present this personally, but am available or prepared to help council move in this direction. Thank you.
And obviously no time for questions. We are going to hear from Robert Perry Cameron now before we move to lunch. So Perry, if you'd like to join us at the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Ministers, just a brief footnote about the submission I made, which was essentially focused around roading costs and so forth, which my view have become excessive over the last decade, say. The project that I'm involved in, it went from short road, it increased from somewhere around 300,000 or 400,000 to 400,000, 600,000, 800,000, 1.1 million. So that is an unfortunate example. I believe that I'll call it a regional government should become involved in our construction works. And when I talk about region, I talk about Wairarapa. I don't mean Wellington region. I believe Wairarapa is, I think, the second largest land block in New Zealand alongside West Coast. And apparently our agricultural industry is about third behind the Waikato and Taranaki. That's a somewhat outdated economic assessment. Probably now, if you looked at the wine industry in Martinborough, we might even be up a bit higher than that already. So there we are. I sincerely hope that the sort of services that I experienced as a young chap, my father was the operations manager for the Hutt County Council in those days. They had a heavy works equipment base over in near Waikanae. We did 2 trips a week over the west side of the mountain range and 2 trips a week on the Paikokariki Hill. So that was good work, well done. And that's the sort of service which we should aspire to as an important district. Finally, I just want to mention that the work that I think will be ongoing is becoming greater awareness of the expected future cash flow of operations of local government, rather than looking back on historical costs and so forth, and all the accounting reporting and costs that go into that sort of accounting. We need to pay more attention in what is the future financial obligations and what is the best way to meet them. Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. That's about all I have to say at this stage. Thank you for fitting me in late notice.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you for making yourself available.
Mm.
I just have one question of clarification. When you talk about regional government that should become involved in roading costs, etc., are you suggesting a regional unitary authority, like an amalgamation or the setup of a new entity?
New region,
Different new.
not Wellington.
Yeah.
You.
Good on you, Barry.
Any further questions for Perry before we break for the morning? Because it's 4 o'clock.
Sure. The where you said we're the third in agriculture behind Taranaki and Waikato.
So,
Also, where you said we're third behind Taranaki and Waikato in agricultural. Do you know if that includes?
I know about.
Do you know if those figures include forestry?
No, the assessment that I was involved in, the economic assessment, was not particularly aware of forestry, because in those days, at one stage I was corporate secretary for the newly established New Zealand Forestry, which unfortunately went down to Google, as you know. Back in those days, it did not include forestry. They just planted. There you go. You see where it's not now. Where's the value of it? They tell us we have exports of so many millions of dollars. Who's getting it? Not us. China.
Yep.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry.
That brings us to the end of our morning session. We will break due to reconvene at 12:30 for our afternoon sessions. Everyone.